brought my pencil. Give me something to write on, man.
Welcome to the Meridian Learning and Development Hangout. My name's Allison, and I'm with Meridian. And today I'm joined by Ed Baldwin, who is the founder of HRO Partners and an HR consultant. And then, of course, Chris Dunn, who is the founder of Fistful of Talent and the CHRO of Kinetics. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, Allison. It's great to have Ed here. I know he's excited.
Yeah, so today you guys are going to be talking about change management training, which I've heard is something that you guys have been working together a lot on recently.
Yeah, that's right. So Ed and I are in the middle of a rollout with some change management training, specifically Change Agile, where we're going to get into a little bit today. We're in the middle of a rollout for a great company. And, you know, one of the things I love about it, I think I'll throw it to Ed, I think he'll concur with this, and then we'll throw it back to you to get us started, is by really digging in to the Change Agile side. You know, it's like a great opportunity to learn. So when you dig in, like with a company that's actively going through change and trying to think about a better way to do it, you tend to learn a lot as a practitioner. So it's been a good run. Ed, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even also say that, you know, as a consultant, everybody's trying to figure out a way to get better at change, and they're dealing with the onslaught from a lot of different directions. And you know, Change Agile has been a really great model for that particular client, and I think it could be a really valuable model for a lot of other folks as well in terms of how to help their organizations adapt and deal with the changes that everybody has to face these days.
Fantastic. So before we get started, I just want to let anyone know who's viewing this live that if you have questions or comments during the Hangout, feel free to enter them in the Q&A section on your screen, and I can pass this along to Ed and Chris. So first question, why are models like Kotter's 8-step model still relevant but sometimes don't unlock the full potential of your organization's ability to deal with change?
Ed, I'll let you take this one. You lead us off.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you know, one of the reasons why a lot of those change management models are still really applicable today is, just as we said, change is constant. It's coming, and it's coming in droves and waves that are even more significant than in the past. And so, you know, people are trying to figure out ways to deal with those. And then a second reason that they're still relevant is because the way in which people react to that change also really isn't much different than it was when these models were put together. So I think in those two respects, at least, the change management models are really important because there's not that much difference than when they were first developed.
Yeah, and I guess what I would add to, you know, that, Ed, is I would say that, you know, models like, you know, Kotter's like 8 steps, they really seem like they're more designed to be top down, right? They seem like they're designed for you know, somebody from, you know, big consulting, and Ed's a quality consultant, but he's a little bit smaller in scale than some of the big boys. And it really seems like some of those models like Kotter are designed to say, hey, we know what the change is going to be, so let's put our employees through the old change management cycle, get them to the point where they accept change, and we're going to like cram this thing down. Some of the newer models like Change Agile are less about that. So if you take some of the old models, they can help you understand some of the stages and some of the things you need to do to communicate the change and get people to accept it, but they won't necessarily, like, you know, for example, allow you to engage your employees. Hey, do you have any ideas about the best way to get to this end goal where certainly we're going to experience change? They don't really unlock like the brainstorming and the innovation. And I guess with that, and we're going to talk about that, you got to be careful what you ask for related to ideas, but we kind of feel like there's a better way to do change management than some of those traditional models give you. Now, the last thing I'll say, and Ed, you may want to come back in on this, is you can be as new wave as you want with change management. You can get people involved, you can brainstorm ideas, and you'll get better engagement from employees going through periods of change. But a lot of those old models still are relevant. They don't necessarily unlock the full potential of your workforce, but they're still relevant because they're pretty good in terms of telling you what stages people are going to go through, right, Ed?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you said, people are still responding and reacting in the same way. They're still following that same cycle, but some of the traditional management models can leave you feeling a little bit helpless as a leader, especially when they're telling you that as part of those models that you've got to let people kind of progress through those changes. And so you feel a little bit helpless, like, hey, I recognize that, you start with denial and then you progress through chaos into acceptance, those kinds of things. But, as leaders, we want to drive the change. We want to lead the change. And so Change Agile and some of the updates that we're going to talk about to some of those traditional models, they really help us as leaders not feel, helpless when it comes to change, and things that we can do to engage and interact with our employees in a way that, one, helps them get on with the change quicker, but also as leaders helps us feel more enabled to help our teams progress through it. So.
Hey, and a cool way I heard Ed say this in the session is he said that, hey, this model is just like Kubler-Ross, which I can't picture it. Ed, is that, I always talk about it's the stages of grieving, right?
Yeah.
Like after you have a loss. So we're really talking about the acceptance of death related to how some of the change management models work. Seems like maybe we could be a little more arms around America or arms around the globe related to that.
Yeah, unfortunately, the change effort for a lot of employees feels a lot like remorse and death. And,
right.
And it's also, we're going to talk a little bit about this, but how do you pivot a little bit and talk about innovation as opposed to change? Because change could be really good, but it could be really bad, where I think most people, when they think about innovation, they think that in a more positive sense.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. That was my next question. So, why is change management more about getting your employees to innovate than it is understanding the change that's being forced upon them?
Well, I'll take this one first, and I think so we've got this concept of change agile that's not, we didn't create it. We're just picking a way to kind of engage people in change agile. And I think what we kind of lose sight of is that we have an end goal where we need to be, and we know change is going to be a part of that. Well, the people that actually do the work might have some good ideas. So it pays to have some type of process with change management set up where you go through a brainstorming period to see what ideas people have. Now, are all the ideas going to be good? Absolutely not. So one of the things we talk about with Change Agile is a way to help managers kind of in a group setting evaluate ideas and have other people tell the person in question, that's not a great idea, here's why. And even if you were the manager, you as the executive, have the ideas and you're 99% sure that your idea is going to win the day, what we know just through the research is that if you involve employees in brainstorming what could be done to get you to the state you need to be that's going to cause a lot of change, just by involving them, they're going to be more accepting of an idea that maybe they didn't come up with than they will be if you just put out the big memo. And I say memo, I mean memo in 36 font, right? Memo on top of it, and you communicate change that way. We just know people are going to be more accepting if you allow them to contribute to the process. Ed, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, the only thing I would add is that, as leaders, we are ultimately accountable and responsible for kind of setting the direction for our team. But we also know that we're not often the smartest person in the room. I mean, maybe you do have that change effort. Maybe you got everything outlined. But more often than not, we're setting a strategic direction. We don't necessarily know what the best way or what the best approach is to get that achieved. And so, again, concepts like Change Agile, methodologies like that allow you to engage the team. And yeah, you have to give up a little bit of control because you have to kind of guide the process. But, at the end of the day, as leaders, we're probably more intent on making sure that our strategic direction gets achieved, not the means by which it gets achieved. And so engaging people in that effort can be a little bit of a relief for us as leaders because we don't have to necessarily be the smartest guy in the room and have all the answers to all the questions.
But you might be the smartest person in the room, Ed, but you're still going to go through the process when it comes to change Agile. Allison is probably the smartest person on this Google Hangout.
Oh, I
That's
see.
the question.
Let's just say what it is, right? Which is why she's here facilitating this, to keep us like between the ditches.
You're nice. Okay, let's change gears a little bit. So what does change agile mean in the space of change management training?
So I always think about this like from a change management perspective. I think traditional theories say it's all top-down. So I'll top line a couple of things and I'll throw it to Ed. What change agile really says is, A, and we've talked about this, you're going to involve employees. Like you're going to state, like you may have a team vision in mind, or you may be working on like a single problem or issue. And you're going to state what that is, and you're going to allow employees to help you come up with ideas about potential solutions that would like help you improve whatever it is you want to improve. And there's obviously like change involved with that. The other thing that the change agile kind of means, I guess a couple of other things, is that it means that you're not going to come up with a project plan that's 9 months long. You're not going to bring like a nuclear like weapon to something that really requires a hammer. So the other thing Change Agile does is it says, hey, think about the smallest possible solution. And this is like straight up from the Agile, like, you know, kind of perspective of software development. Think about the smallest possible solution and build that, test it in a very brief period of time, and then like understand whether it worked, whether it kind of worked, whether it like sucked, whatever, and you make a decision whether you're going to move forward and you continue to build on that solution. So I think a lot of times when we do change from a top-down perspective, and then Ed, I'll throw it to you, when we do change from a top-down perspective, we tend to say, I've got the idea, I know what we need to do, and we over-engineer it. Change Agile says you should test the smallest possible change and then build on that, because if you're wrong, failure will come quickly. It won't come 9 months down the road and leave you jobless, you know, wondering where it all went wrong. Ed, what do you got? What would you add in terms of what Change Agile means?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we've all been there, right, as leaders. We've been committed to a change. We believe it's absolutely the right answer. We get fully invested in it. We may engage our teams, but quite frankly, we're kind of, you know, hell-bent on heading in a particular direction, and we get totally invested in it, and then we get to the end and we realize that it wasn't what we expected it to be. We didn't get the outcomes we'd hoped to achieve, et cetera, et cetera. So, like you said, Chris, it's the ability to kind of avert that disaster and to really get a broad spectrum of ideas and maybe decide and commit to some of those changes, but to do so in smaller increments where you're able to pivot and adjust if you're not getting the outcomes that you'd hoped, and engaging your team in that effort. And so, you know, like I said, we've all been there. We've all been there where we've been under such a belief that we had the answer and it was the right thing to do. And, you know, don't want to put yourself in that position as a leader, not just because of the penalties that you take on as an individual, but, you know, your team loses face in that effort as well. And so being able to take change in increments and being able to pivot and adjust to get to the successes that you're looking for, I mean, to me, that is Change Agile. It's just a collection of tools and techniques to be able to help you as a leader bring your team through a change effort.
Hey, and one other thing, Allison, that Change Agile means in the space of change management is Change Agile really creates like more of a visual component to change, where if you're running tests, like if you had an idea session with your team to solve a certain problem as part of the change management process, you would actually put a lot of the stuff that you're working on. You would take their idea or your idea, whichever idea won the day, and then if you're running that test, you really make it visual. So Change Agile also means you make it visual, and it means that you should kill Microsoft Excel when it comes to like tracking projects, because let's face it, nobody opens that stuff. Nobody.
It also lives in like 3 different places. It's like on the shared drive. It's in the email. You don't have the most
Now,
updated.
you could be a really trendy person, Allison. You could say, well, Chris, we use Google Docs at my company. Same thing, right?
Someone's going to ask you, do you spend more time looking for the document than you do using it?
Nobody. The only people that open that is the project manager, like the nerdiest of project people, and maybe the person with the most to lose. Nobody else does that. So that's why we make it visual, and there's nothing more powerful than running a test, like related to some type of improvement, making it visual, and then bringing the team back together. And this is another component of Change Agile, and sharing the results of that test, and really leading the conversation about whether you're going to continue, whether you're going to like make that test part of your operation and it worked, or you're just going to kill it. So a lot of what Change Agile does in the space of change management is it says that wherever we're going, whether it's their idea, my idea, whatever, it's a process to involve employees to make them have greater change adoption and get to the end game of where we want to be with that adoption in a quicker fashion. Because nobody likes a laggard, right? And I'm not calling you a laggard, Allison, because that would be impolite because you're on this trendy, like, hangout. You're not a laggard. You're an early adopter.
Yes, I guess I could be. Okay, so one more question for you, and then to anyone watching, if you guys have any last-minute questions or comments, feel free to put them in the side of your screen in the Q&A section. So my final question is, how can managers and executives embrace employee involvement in change activities without giving up the control of strategic direction and vision?
Ed, I'll let you lead.
Okay. Well, it's a little bit of a follow-on as well from the way we kind of closed the last question, which is, as a leader, what you want to build is trust and credibility as the leader of your team. And the visual nature of Change Agile also helps because transparency is a core element of that in building trust. Also being able to test, and not just test in a successful fashion, but a test that ultimately results in failure and an acknowledgement of that failure. You know, being comfortable with mistakes is a real trendy part of what people want to create in terms of cultures. And by Change Agile being visual in that respect, I think it can help build trust. To get to the question, though, of losing control as a leader, just because you implement these change management techniques in Change Agile doesn't mean you have to give up all of your control. You know, it doesn't automatically defer to a completely democratic process. In fact, what it really does is allows you and enables you as a leader to gather a lot more data and a lot more information in kind of real time with which to ultimately make a decision. And so, you know, as long as you stage on the front end of these processes what you want your employees engaged and involved in, creating ideas, evaluating ideas, testing ideas, and certainly their opinions and views about which of these changes are, you know, the most likely to succeed. You know, you don't have to hand it over and have a vote at the end to decide that, you know, ideas 1, 3, and 5 are the ones we're going with. You can stage it and set it up on the front end to say, at the end of the day, I'll take all this data on board, and as the leader, I'll make a decision about where I think we need to go. So, you know, Chris, you may want to jump in on that, but I think that's a natural apprehension of leaders in terms of engaging their team is, gosh, I don't have control anymore.
Yeah, and I'll be brief, Allison, because I know we're almost out of time. I think Ed hit on most of the points. You know, we do train that people don't have to lose control of their decision-making authority. I would say that this really puts a premium on a manager of people's facilitation skills to work people through like probably 3 or 4 important pieces to change management, bringing the team together and doing some very specific activities. You don't have to give up all control. I would say, and I'll leave you with this, that Change Agile, done the right way, positions you as a leader somewhere between managing a representative democracy and being a benevolent dictator. and it probably depends on the relative merits and values of the ideas that are presented. You can still be benevolent, as Ed said, and still do what you know needs to happen for the business. But boy, and I'll leave you with this, I'll throw it to you, Allison, you would love for those people to come up with the ideas rather than you, because you know if that happens, you're going to get to the adoption of the change much, much quicker.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me this afternoon, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.